So our topic this past month has been Love in Action. And today's talk, which is the last in that series, is on the healing power of love. I've been talking all month, and that was the month of May, you will remember, even though this is the first week in June, about the many faces of love. And the principle that they all stem from is universal love, or unconditional love. And on Wednesdays and Thursdays at our midweek gatherings, we've also been talking about the many faces of love in this thing we call life. So we move that on into midweek gatherings, so those who aren't able to attend on Sunday have the opportunity. And for those of you who aren't able to attend midweek, still another opportunity, only on Wednesday nights and Thursday afternoons, you get to talk, and I get to listen. So in both settings, both here and in our midweek gatherings, we find that sometimes we can all use a reminder, like the words in the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, where there is hatred, let me bring love. Where there is wrong, let me bring the spirit of forgiveness. Where there is discord, let me bring harmony. So today I'm going to finish this series on Love in Action by talking about the healing power of love. Because our true, peaceful selves can come into being only when we face and release the false selves that we've created in order to manage in this world, to get by, if you will. This is all about allowing ourselves to find our core, or our essence, the innermost of our being, which is our spiritual self, the essence of our connection with all life, not just life as we know it in this moment on this planet, but all life. And so central to this realization is that along with encouraging and allowing our true selves to emerge, we also find that our physical selves benefit immeasurably. Listen to the words of Dr. Larry Dossey. Any of you familiar with Dr. Dossey's book on healing words? Dr. Dossey says, if scientists suddenly discovered a drug that was as powerful as love in creating health, that drug would be heralded as a medical breakthrough overnight, especially if it had as few side effects and was as inexpensive as love. Love is intimately related with health. There's even a chapter in this medical doctor's book on how to pray and what to pray for. I did a talk one time titled, How Then Shall I Be Healed? And it followed much of what Dr. Dossey outlined in his book. And as Duke Wellington, jazz musician of a few decades ago, once said, everybody prays in his or her own language, and there is no language that God doesn't understand. So pray as you can, not as you can't. Claim vibrant good health. Seek intuitive guidance and expect the highest and best good of your body. And learn to do a positive, nurturing, healing spiritual practice that directs your intentions in that way. One of my favorite teachers, Reverend Lloyd Strom, suggested frequently, as a matter of fact, pray out of inspiration so you don't have to pray out of desperation. In other words, release the tendencies to wish and to hope. Those are some of those words we talked about earlier. And instead, develop a positive, trusting intention to expect and accept. Dr. Dossey's book is about 20 years old now and still young and vibrant in its message. This is a medical doctor who recognizes and practices the power of prayer as a central prescription, if you will, and uses it in his own practice of medicine. Not just in his own spiritual practice, but also encouraging and guiding his patients to do the same. Now let's briefly address what both emotional health and happiness. Happiness has very little to do with how much money we have. It has very little to do with who we're married to, or even if we're married. It has very little to do with our status or our career. It certainly has nothing to do with the externals of our lives. Happiness is an inside job. But most of us spend most of our time looking out there somewhere for it. So to become peaceful, connected with life, and happy, the trick is to develop a practice which directs our awareness inward. So I turn to a handbook for living by guess who? The Dalai Lama. And this book is titled The Art of Happiness. Isn't that sweet? The Art of Happiness. In it, he talks about our right to happiness and to claiming our innate state of happiness. And he also suggests some sources of happiness, though by now you may very well have started your own list of ways that coincide and support you. Wow, I've got a bit of a hurricane going on here this morning. Often, as awake and aware as we spiritual beings having a human experience, we come to realize that when challenges confront us, eventually a greater good is produced as a result. And usually, when we don't realize it, it's because we're not paying attention. So that's not saying that every experience in our lives is sweetness and light. Sometimes they are challenges. However, what I said about ultimately, eventually, a greater good is produced as a result is still true. So I want to share with you 4 ways that I found that support our developing these ideas to a greater extent and to a higher level in our own lives. The first one is to show up for your life. 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 Or even just show up. At an early age, most of us learn to show up the way people around us expect us to, instead of showing up for ourselves. Often those around us are wounded, emotionally or spiritually or both, and from them we develop beliefs about unworthiness or about not being good enough. So we have a tendency to compromise ourselves in order to please others. That's called giving away our power. Showing up for ourselves is not selfish. It's courageous to express our selfness. Here's a second idea along those lines. Taking responsibility, learning our own learning to own our experiences is different than guilt or shame. It means understanding that the patterns or habits that we've developed before we knew better, and then taking charge of changing them. But first, before we can change them, we must be aware of their existence, be aware of the impact they're having, be aware of what we find more interesting in a result than the result we're currently getting, and then take charge of changing them. It's not that we shouldn't make mistakes. We all make mistakes. That's part of the process of learning. But that we should use our mistakes as learning opportunities to grow and do better next time. Here's a third thing to try to think about. You make you happy. It's up to each one of us to be the bringer of love to our own experience. When we connect with that universal power of love, whatever you choose to call that, then we're able to bring love to our own experience rather than expecting or depending on someone or something else to do it for us. And then fourth, accept yourself right now, right here, just as you are. Love yourself right here, right now, just as you are. At the heart of self-acceptance is the willingness to forgive yourself. When we're able to begin this process, opportunities come up constantly to make such breakthroughs. It's called seeing your own innocence. Isn't that lovely? Seeing your own innocence. And seeing that what you did, thought, or said was out of fear, not shame, maybe ignorance. Practicing forgiveness is being forgiving, and it always starts right here. Even sometimes when we think, oh, we've already done that work, because I hear that sometimes, oh, I've done all that work. Well, how's that working for you? And that's really the measure. How far along this pathway to the expression of loving kindness. I am filled with loving kindness. I'm filled with joy and health. And when you see that and feel that, and that's what's in your mind every morning when you wake up, then the most important task for you that day is to live that, is to be that. And folks, that is what goes before you in every moment. These 4 ideas, incidentally, are from a man named Paul Farini, who is an author, a workshop presenter, and a spiritual counselor. And he's written over 40 books on love, on healing, on forgiveness. And you can Google him and check him out and see what else he has to say and what workshops are available. And perhaps pursue that if you're so inclined. You see, when we allow ourselves this healing power of love of self, power of love of self, we're supported in being ourselves by the entire universe. Then we can allow our lives to unfold without worry or fear. That's that confidence that I'm standing not only on hallowed ground or sacred ground, but I'm standing on solid ground. I am grounded. we know then that our inner guidance will always provide the next step, the next idea, the next experience. That's that intuition, that intuitive flash. That's God, Spirit, divine intelligence conversing with us, and we're aware of it because it's always going on. It's when we begin to feel it, to see it, to hear it, to live it. That's us opening up, because the senior partner's always on duty. We begin to get it, that we are supported, and that what we are seeking is also seeking us, and will be given us when it's time and it's right. And it's time and it's right when I open up to it being time and right for me, because it's always universally available. Sometimes in puzzlement we might think, why is it showing up like that? And that's the time we get to practice patience. We get to allow it to unfold anyway, which it always does. And when it does, then we understand that it had to unfold that way in order for us to get the results we were after. How often you've heard me say, I can think of 2 or 3 ways to do this thing in my life which isn't unfolding like I thought it would. The universe has an endless array of possibilities. And so sometimes when I'm sure that I'm clear on this and it shows up differently than I expected, first of all, I must be aware that it's showing up. So stay aware. And secondly, maybe this is better than the 2 or 3 options I know about, so that's what I expected. Or maybe this is one door opening to a whole series of doors opening. You see, rather than condemning it or missing it altogether, just simply letting it go right over the top of my head, I am awake, I'm alert, I'm aware, and I'm discerning. So that's the healing power of universal love. The universe is always conspiring in our behalf. Intuitively, we're always guided to the greater good for ourselves, which incidentally is the greatest good for those around us as well. It's just that in order for us to respond to universal love, we must first love ourselves. So we recognize it. Sometimes that means taking a self-inventory with the intention to make some positive changes. Sometimes that takes forgiving ourselves for past mistakes and letting go of them. Acknowledge, bless, and release. So showing up for your life, taking responsibility, making yourself happy, and accepting yourself are the kickstarts that rev up this engine of purpose within you. And this renews your enthusiasm for this marvelous journey called life. Why not take the ride of your life on this great adventure? And so it is.